The San Antonio Spurs' 2025-26 regular season came to an end on Sunday evening in San Antonio, with the Spurs surprisingly losing to the Denver Nuggets. Both teams were missing some key players. Just look at the roster for Denver. I mean, they sat pretty much everyone in this game from their core rotation except Nikola Jokic, who had to play over 15 minutes in order to become award eligible. But then after that, he didn't play in the second half. And then as we see from the Spurs roster, they were missing both of their centers, and Victor Wembanyama was out for this game, and then also backup center Luke Cornett was out. So the Spurs had to have Mason Plumlee start, and then there was a little bit of Bismack Biyombo off the bench, as well as a lot of Carter Bryant at small ball five in the backcourt, or in the other front court lineups. However, the Spurs, defensively, as you can see here, as I'm going to talk about in more detail, they just could not. It was another game against Denver, even with a bunch of players out from the Nuggets core rotation, they still could not get stops against Denver. And so that has been a problem with the Spurs playing the Nuggets so far through 4 games this season. So the Spurs ended up losing to the Nuggets 128-118. Let's go through a quick game story of what took place. Then I'll talk a little bit about some of the individual players in this game. So as we can see, the Nuggets just got off to a really good start. It was a pretty close first quarter with Denver leading by 3, but then it was that second quarter. Jokic was still playing at this point, and the Nuggets got their lead all the way up to 23 points, which was the largest lead of the game. Then in the second half, again, no Jokic, but Denver just continued to maintain these double-digit leads for the second half. There were some points, yes, where the Spurs got within 6 points, within 8 points, especially in the last 2 minutes. The Spurs were actually only down by 6, and they had several 3-point opportunities to try to. They would shoot a 3, miss it, get a rebound, shoot another 3, miss it, and so they had several chances to try to get the lead even closer than 6, but they just could never get those shots to fall. As we saw from that first graphic that I showed, they had a rough night shooting the basketball from outside on a night when they really needed it. Shooting 32% as a team from deep. You just see all their jump shooting wasn't here in the red, and that's one thing they try to do a lot. Is we see here they didn't really attack as much. Just 43% of their shots came from the paint. And part of that is very deliberate, where like you don't want them going so aggressive, the Spurs, because obviously the playoffs are about to start. You don't want to risk anybody getting injured. So that, again, they relied more so on jump shots. A lot of 3-pointers here, as we can see, 47% of their shots. But then when those shots aren't going down, like this was the case tonight, where they shot 32% from outside. This is one where Denver made enough plays and scored enough inside. 62 paint points here to defeat San Antonio. So the Spurs were dealt with I would say surprising loss. Again, the Spurs were favored by 9.5 points. Let's talk about the players now for both teams. Who really stood out in this game for both squads. Let's begin with the Spurs. So looking at their individual player game score metrics, the player who had statistically a well above average game was De'Aaron Fox, and I know that he had a rough ending, missing all those threes in a row. So he ends up with 24 points in the night, but on 88 of 21 shooting. Again, the thing that really hurt his shooting was the 3-point shooting, where he went 4 of 14 from the 3-point line. He filled up the box score though in other areas: 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, 2. That's pretty good for Fox. Devin Vassell had a pretty good night with 19 points. Also 3-point shooting was okay, 38% from outside, 3 of 8, but got more so driving inside to finish some buckets. 4 rebounds for him, 2 steals stood out for Devin. Who else had a pretty good game? Stephon Castle came back from injury, so he ends up with 10 points in the night. Rough shooting game, 3 of 10, but he did make some big threes toward the end of the third quarter. He made 2 threes in a row to get the Spurs within 6 at one point. Almost got a triple-double again with 11 rebounds and 9 assists. 2 turnovers there for Castle. And then also, who else had a pretty good game here? Keldon Johnson off the bench with 18 points. Ends up shooting 6 of 12 from the floor, 6 rebounds, but he did have 4 personal fouls. And then rookie Carter Bryant, like I said, played a lot of small ball 5 again for the Spurs. Ends up with 13 points. Had a really cool alley-oop dunk where he's like flying, cross court, and then Stephon Castle finds him for an alley-oop dunk. He dunks it with 2 hands, where it looked like Carter was so high in the air that it looked like his eyes were like eye level with the rim. But then he made his first 3 in the game when Jokic gave him space in the first half. But then for the remainder of the game, he would struggle, going 1 of 7 overall from 3. Also filled up the box score pretty well: 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 personal fouls, and then 3 blocks for Carter, especially. That was pretty important for him. So those are kind of the guys who really stood out for the Spurs on offense. But the issue was, like I mentioned, on the defensive end. First of all, let's begin with Jokic. He only played in 18 minutes to qualify for end of season awards in the first half. What did he do in those 18 minutes? Oh, cool. An efficient 23 points and 7 to 12 shooting, 8 of 8 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds. Again, Plumlee and Bismack Biyombo, and then small ball with Carter Bryant just weren't enough to stop him. So then he comes out of the game in the second half, and now it's David Roddy who was a big problem for the Nuggets. I mean, for the Spurs in the second half. 15 points, 13 rebounds, 7 offensive rebounds. So Roddy really prevented the Spurs from making that comeback. Julian Strawther got to start and got to put up a lot of shots, and he was really efficient for Denver. 25 points, 9 of 19 shooting, maybe not as efficient as I thought, but 3-point shooting was really good for him. 4 of 8 shooting, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Who else had a pretty good game from Denver? Bruce Brown got to start. 14 points in 28 minutes, really attacking the Spurs inside. 4 rebounds, 5 assists. And then who else? They had, like I said, Denver just had a lot of role players really step up, considering pretty much their entire rotation was out for this game. Jonas Valanciunas, had himself a second half with 16 points overall in the game, 11 rebounds. He too on the offensive glass, 5 boards. When the Spurs went small ball, he really took advantage and scored inside with his hook shots, with his close to the basket putbacks as well. And then Curtis Jones came out of nowhere too with 13 points, makes 4 of 4 3-pointers, some deep threes too. He wasn't like right on the line. He was pretty far beyond the arc. 5 rebounds, 3 assists. So again, the Nuggets role players really helped them, spoil the evening for the Spurs, where the Spurs were favored again by 10 points, pretty much by 9.5. And they could not, win this game because of, like I mentioned, their defense. So now let's just go look at the game tracker, see what stood out for the Spurs compared to their usual scoring in games throughout the season. So where is my game tracker? Let's see here. Let's see, game tracker. Here it is. Okay. All right. So the Spurs, like I mentioned, they were favored by 9.5. They ended up losing. So they finished the season 50-14 as favorites this season. So again, not a bad record. I mean, that's a great record to win 50 games, beat a favorite, only 14 losses. So they did lose by 10 there. Again, it's very rare that they lose. Look at all these wins they have. It was only their 4th loss since February 1st. What are they? 30-4 now to finish the season. So their largest lead, though, they could never build a double-digit lead without Wemby, without Luke Cornett, on the team for this game. So they were only up by 5 was their biggest lead. Normally they're up by 18.5 points per game. So they didn't have that luxury. They finished the season 62-20, an incredible record still for this Spurs team that was only supposed to win 44 games against 62-20. They ended up losing the 2s, so they went 20-12 this season when losing the 2s. They won the 3-point. Actually, I'd have to fix that. I think that they lost. They won the 3-point line, but they got it. They got a defeat, so that should actually be 40-9. And I'll have to look at that. They also won. I think they lost the free. Yeah, they lost the free throw line, so they're 17-10 when losing the free throw line. Offensively, like I mentioned, it was just the shooting that really sticks out for them. They normally shoot 36% from 3. Tonight they shot 32%. Scoring in the paint was pretty much okay. Without Wemby there, they really didn't get to the free throw line. And also, you can't really blame them for not being as aggressive attacking inside either, because again, you don't want to risk them getting hurt, considering that this game, didn't have any change on their standings. Now it did for Denver, as I'll talk about here at the end. So again, not really got to the free throw line without Wemby there for the Spurs. What else sticks out to me? Let's see here. 9 turnovers. They actually took care of the ball pretty well. So like I said, you just see their attacking the paint wasn't really there as much. And again, you can't really blame them, considering they were just trying to get through this game basically and prepare for the playoffs. You want to try to get to the playoffs with 100% health. And one player I forgot to mention regarding 100% health is rookie Dylan Harper. He ends up only playing 18 minutes in the game here, as we see here. And that's because he had to leave the game in the 4th quarter. The team announced that he had a left thumb injury. So, Coach Johnson didn't have an update of how severe that was. Jeff McDonald reported over on Blue Sky that, Harper didn't, it didn't seem too worrying, just based on the initial reaction that Jeff had talked to Harper. So again, we'll see what his status is for game 1 as the playoffs approach next Sunday on April 19th. So now let's go look at what the issue was for the Spurs as it has been for them against Denver. It's basically the defense. I mean, they were down by as many as 23 points, something that doesn't happen much to this team when they're down by 20. That was only their 8th game of the season, being down by 20. And so they fell to 1-7. They ended the season when down by 20 points. As we can see here, they just could not, stop Denver. They just couldn't, every quarter that, 3 of the 4 quarters, Denver scored over 30 points, 30 or more points. So again, that wasn't a good sign for the Spurs defense. And again, they were missing Wemby and Cornett, 2 of their defensive anchors. The Nuggets ended up scoring 128 points against the Spurs. So that number is going to impact their record as well. As we see here, one of the big issues was the Spurs' defense inside the paint. Denver scored 62 paint points. Again, 57% shooting for Denver inside the paint. Again, that's very concerning considering that the Spurs did not have Wemby and Cornette. So that's kind of where you can attribute that number to, with Denver living inside. And then, of course, the 128 points. This has just been an issue with playing the Nuggets for the Spurs, is that Denver is one of those teams who continues to get over 120 points in every game. Against San Antonio, even without a lot of their core guys in, the Nuggets still took care of the ball fairly well. The Spurs only forced four steals and got just 12 turnovers. And then here was the big one. Look at this. On game 82 of the season, the Nuggets set a new opponent season high 33 second chance points against the Spurs defense. So again, that was the big issue, was all those second chances for the Nuggets. 19 offensive boards was a problem, and then of course 33 second chance points. And again, we attribute that a big part of that to Wemby and Cornette not being there for San Antonio in this game. So now let's talk about going forward. What is so now? I mean, the regular season's over now. The Spurs have about a week to rest, and now they get ready for the playoffs coming up here, where their first game will be on March 19th, a week from now, on a Sunday evening in San Antonio. Let's just talk about the playoff picture, where this win put the Nuggets and also the Spurs and the Suns and the Blazers. So let's first talk about the first round for the Spurs. What's going to happen here? So on Tuesday, make sure you're ready to watch this game. It's going to be the play-in game between the Phoenix Suns and Portland Trailblazers, where the Blazers will be on the road in Phoenix. Now, remember, if the Sun, whoever wins this game, they're going to play the Spurs in round one. So if the Suns win, it's going to be Spurs versus Suns. If it's the Blazers, it's going to be Spurs versus Blazers. So again, make sure that keep an eye on that on Tuesday. That's going to be the big game where we will see who wins, to see who the Spurs will face in round one. And again, game one of the first round does begin on April 19th for the Spurs, a Sunday evening. I believe it's 8:00 p.m. Central Time, San Antonio. Now let's talk about what this Nuggets win meant and why it was very interesting that they ended up winning this game. Because with them sitting all their players, for this game pretty much outside of Jokic, the indication was, Denver's trying to lose this game. That way they can, fall to 4 and play the Rockets in round one, and then have to basically play the Thunder in round two. Basically get the Thunder out of the way faster, maybe beat the Rockets quicker. Well, now by beating the Spurs, surprisingly, they have actually elected to go a little bit more of the tougher route, where now they're going to play Minnesota in round one. And then should they win that series, now they're going to play the Spurs in round two. So again, you could just kind of tell that the Spurs didn't probably want to face the Nuggets in round two, because they were actually trying to win this game, toward the end there, where they had a lot of their core guys still out there. De'Aaron Fox is out there, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell was out there. So Coach Johnson said they were trying to find that line of like trying to still compete in the game, but then also watching the minutes of all the players. So that's another, that kind of showed a sign a little bit that maybe the Spurs didn't want to face Denver. Maybe they were hoping to face the Lakers, because the Lakers did blow out the Jazz on Sunday, but because Denver won, Denver ends up with one more win than the Lakers. So the Lakers will play the Rockets, and then the winner of that series will go on to play OKC in round two. Well, now the Spurs are going to get the winner again of Suns and or Blazers, and then they're going to get the winner of Wolves and Nuggets, assuming both teams advance. So again, it looks like should Denver take care of business against Minnesota and the Spurs take care of business against either Phoenix or Portland, we are going to get that Denver-San Antonio matchup most likely in the second round. And then, of course, who knows how long that series goes, and the winner of that series will be very beat up, just going at it against each other. And then they're going to have to play most likely OKC in the conference finals. So really, I think the winner of the night was OKC. They get probably, I would say, the easier path, toward getting to the conference finals. They're either going to get the winner of They're going to get one of Clippers, Warriors, Suns, or Blazers. They're going to get one of those teams, the team that wins the 9-10 game, and then from there they're going to get the winner of Rockets, Lakers. So again, for the Thunder, this ended up being a good night for them. Whereas the Nuggets, they put themselves in the path of the Timberwolves, and then of course the Spurs now have to see Denver most likely in round two, or maybe who knows, maybe the Wolves win that series, and so we'll see who the Spurs play basically here now in round two. So again, playoffs begin here soon. Just go ahead and keep an eye on that game on Tuesday between the Suns and the Blazers.